And I think we need to add a couple more people. I think we're set there. Okay. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to take us to PowerPoint first. And it's just a little bit smaller here. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we are going to cover the actual configuration options, how Timesheet is actually, it's a module in the ESS system. So we're going to show you where you turn that module on, how you configure the module, and then as the timesheet manager, how you go in and set up the groups and group chains for it and the areas that they would go in and actually set up their timesheets, creating periods, shifts, and holidays. So we'll cover that, and then we'll go into actually creating a timesheet, approving a timesheet, and then exporting. Exporting has recently, just very recently changed. They've changed the export options, and we just updated the documentation late last week, beginning of this week, to be honest, because it just came out on the last release. So we'll cover all of those updated options underneath the export, and we'll go through some options together. And I have to be honest with you, this is still new to the support team as well. You know, we are getting tickets, but we're still getting familiar with all the different options in here. If there isn't a question, there's a question that we can't answer, we will definitely jot those down and we'll get back with everyone. We'll probably create maybe a document or probably maybe add on to the PowerPoint those questions that we need to follow up on. Yes, so this is still all new to us. And I know that, you all are just starting to use it or you're wanting to use it. So it's probably why you're on this session. It's going to be a team effort here, and we'll get you guys through this. Okay. So before you even start wanting to use timesheets, there are a couple things that has to be kept in mind. Is that the timesheet employee, the one that's going to be creating the timesheets, they have to have an existing ESS account, and they probably do. But it does need to be something that needs to be created. And also in USPS, their position record must be marked with the timesheet required. There is a setting out there underneath their position, and it's just a little check mark that they can flag, so that you have to make sure that that timesheet required is set and that the supervisor field is also filled in. Now, what we have here, and I say timesheet guideline, is because we have an actual timesheet guideline out there in our documentation. So I want to take you to that. So to show you what we're talking about here. So I am going to go to our main wiki page here and take you into the employee self-service documentation, user manual, and I'm scrolling down to the appendix, because that's where this is located. And here is the timesheet. And so this is basically like a summary. It kind of summarizes, what's all involved with setting up timesheets. So this information down here is just more of a summary of you need to configure the timesheets, and here are links to take you to those. Here are the actual workflow steps, which is basically just setting up the groups and group chains. And then here are the timesheet options, where you actually go in and set up shifts and periods, and where you go in and actually create timesheets and approve them and export them. So this is more, like I said, of a summary of the things involved with timesheets. What we also provided, and you'll see over here, is we have two links. One here that says initial setup checklist. And then we have one down here on entering, approving, and exporting timesheets. And so these go into more details, like a step-by-step, if you will, of those different areas. So what we're going to focus on first is this initial setup checklist. And it's going to be, going into do the configuration and what all do you need to do to configure? What do I do with, how do I create groups and group chains to establish a workflow for my timesheets? That's the next part. And then the bottom half is what the timesheet manager responsibilities are basically. In order to create a timesheet, there needs to be a shift, a period needs to be set up in order for you to go in and create a timesheet for that period. So we'll cover all of that first. And then when we're done with this, so you can follow along that way and the PowerPoint. And then also down here, then when we're going to go in the second half of the session, we'll actually go in then and create a timesheet, approve a timesheet, and then what the timesheet manager can do. And we're really going to focus on the exporting of the timesheet because those options have changed recently. We're basically going to play around with it and try them out, look at the CSV files, and see what kind of questions you have on those. We're still getting familiar with them as well. So between the two of us, if you guys have some feedback as to updating the documentation, we'll take it. So, all right. I'm gonna go back to my PowerPoint. And so obviously the first step is to make sure that employee timesheet is selected. We have an ESS functionality configuration under the system menu, system configuration menu. That's where you go in to check that you want to use leave requests and stuff like that. So there's one for employee timesheet. So it's pretty self-explanatory. But once that is check marked, what happens then is these three options appear then underneath the system configuration menu. Let me show you what's going on there. Go back. And so what I'm saying is down here underneath system and underneath configuration, the ESS functionality. So that's already been checked, employee timesheet. And when that gets checked, then these three options appear here. And there's a timesheet configuration. Let's talk about that one first. So what this does is allows you to enter in that step value when they're creating their timesheets. Do you want the increments to go in half hour, hour? Click on edit so you can see the different values here. No restrictions. So very similar to like the leave request setup. So, I've got half hour. I think the default is an hour. So I've set it to half hour. Also require reason for overtime items. So if they add overtime items to their timesheet and the district wants them to enter in a reason for it and require a reason to be entered, then this can be checked. Also, email user on timesheet. Some of these we have little tooltips of what they do. So this basically says a user will receive an email notifying them if another user has edited their timesheets. I think that's a big difference between leave requests and timesheets is that, like approvers can't just go in and edit a leave request. But in timesheets, the approver can. So, if Susan Dean, she's the one I'm going to pick on today, creates her timesheet and submits it to her supervisor, Brenda Mullins, and Brenda, is reviewing the timesheet, Susan's timesheet, and sees something that needs to be changed. She does have the ability to go in and edit that and make changes to it. She does. If this is checkmarked, then Susan will get an email saying, "Hey, Brenda updated your timesheet." So that's a good feature to have if districts want the originator to be notified if somebody edited their timesheet. So those are the only options that we have so far underneath the timesheet configuration. Go ahead and close out of that. And so the next one is the timesheet period close configuration. And so this is if you want periods to be automatically closed. And if you do, you would check mark that. And then when you do select that, then you'll get a second prompt here asking when you want them to be automatically closed. I'm going to go ahead and click on edit. And you'll see that, you've got, you can increment this. I've got 2 days after the end date to close. So they can make this 1, they can make this 5, whatever the district wants. But once you check mark this, this will pop up and they'll put that in here. And so that's helpful. So when they go in and, they're automating those periods, obviously, then it's going to go out there, look for that, and automatically close that period after that 2-day window. And then the other one is the workflow configuration. This one always gets me because it's really regarding the email verbiage on the timesheet emails. And this is just like there's one for leave request as well. And so it just basically shows you, this is what's going to be sent, the verbiage that's included when the timesheet is submitted, when the approver gets it, this is a verbiage they'll see. And then obviously this information it's filling in the timesheet details. Those are the tokens that will fill that stuff in. But if the district wants to change these and customize them, these emails, this is where they would do this. Otherwise, if they're fine with the default settings, they don't have to do anything with this one. So those are the 3 actual configuration related. So once you set it up in functionality that you want to use timesheets, you want to go down here and take a look at these, and the district does, and see, okay, what do I want to change on these? And that's it for the actual configuration portion of the setup. Do you guys have any questions about that?
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
So if they wanted to like maybe change the wording on their email messages, they would only want to change the things that aren't defined, like where it said timesheet in the brackets, or does that make sense what
Mhm.
I'm trying to?
Let me go back. So
Yeah,
you're
so
saying
like
one.
so where it says, the $ timesheet, they wouldn't want to touch that part. They'd only want to touch all the words above it or like maybe below it or whatever.
Yeah, if they want to add another line of information here. Yeah, so they do have to be careful about that, right? Because if they go in and wipe this out, I'm pretty sure it's going to let them. I don't think it's going to restrict it. And then basically, then the timesheet information is not included on that email anymore. So
Okay.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, point out there. So yeah, and I think it behaves that way too, Amanda, in the leave request one as well.
Got it. Okay.
I
Because
Yeah, I haven't played around with it to really see, what it does, but I'm assuming if I get rid of this, then and I create that email, I'm going to lose the body of the timesheet details.
yeah, I'm just thinking of I think we all have that one treasurer who isn't afraid to touch things. And
Right. Experiment. Right.
yeah, excuse me.
Yeah.
So,
No. No, that makes perfect sense. I think too on all of these, they do have little tool tips. I know I just run my mouse through here. It kind of goes through and explains all of them. But yeah, when they are actually in here, they see something like this, they'll probably ask, what does this mean exactly? And but yeah, and that's something too, we can look through the documentation and see if we need to add a little more details or little warnings about these to say, you don't want to remove this because then you'll lose the body of the timesheet detail and stuff like that. So I'm going to mark that down just to see if we need to just put a little warning message on the documentation about that. All right. Any other questions about the configuration setup? Okay. All right. Let me look here on my list here and go back to my PowerPoint. And these are the things that we just talked about. I'm going to move on to the next slide. And so the next piece of this is making sure that the groups and group chains are set up. And in order for the workflow. So nothing's really going to go anywhere. That timesheet won't go anywhere if they aren't set up in a workflow. And so behaves just like the leave request workflow. So that's a good thing. It's not anything new. I think the biggest concern is when you're in um, the groups and group chains is that it has both the leave request group chains and the timesheet group chains. And I don't know how many times I have been in the leave request group chain making a change and realize I wasn't in timesheets. So so that's one thing that they have to be aware of. And I think that's the biggest thing. But we do have a convenient button in there that allows you to copy a group over from a leave request group chain to a timesheet group chain and vice versa. And same thing, I'm sorry, with groups and group chains. So I'm going to show you where that's at. These are some extra tips regarding, and let me make this a little bit larger here. I've got a little disclaimer down here that when you do the copy, you may get this message when you're copying like a group chain from a leave request to a timesheet group chain. It may ask you, are you sure you want to copy this group chain? Groups in this chain will also be copied. So I thought that you had to copy the groups over first before you copy the group chain. But this kind of tells me that it's going to do it automatically for you because it says groups in this chain will also be copied. So because I'm copying over a group or group chain. So if a group already exists, the existing one will be used. Some fields are different between the chain types and will not be if some fields are different between the chain types, those will not be copied. This just told me that I had a supervisor one that already exists, and I can click on that, and it's going to give me the information that's within that group. So it's going to pull that information in and say, here was the leave request group members, and these are going to be copied over to the timesheet group members. And I just say yes, it's going to copy that information over. Now, I know we've had, I think, a couple tickets, and maybe some of you are on the call in regards to that. I think there was a ticket recently about seeing, like looking at the matched employees on the groups and group chains and seeing some of those same employees in different groups. I know that there's a kind of a note at the bottom down here, and you'll see that when you do the copy that says these employees' positions are only a reflection. I'm sorry, when you do the mismatch or when you do the matched employees. These employees' positions are only a reflection of the filters on this group chain. Appointment types and daily or hourly filters or chains with a higher priority may impact submissions from employees on this grid. So I think basically it's kind of telling you it's going to work. You may see them on different ones, but the actual approval will be fine. And if somebody wants to, add a little bit more to that, or if they have any experience with that, I believe that's basically kind of telling you that you may see them on the matched on more than one group chain, but the flow will go accordingly. So
Hey,
let me
Michelle.
take you. Yes.
I was the one, I know I put a ticket in on that.
Okay.
Uh, I I understand that, and I think it's I can follow that logic. I'm just concerned when, we have people in the district, they're not gonna quite grasp that, and it would, you know, because when it says match, they think, oh, this are the people who should be in there. So I don't know if it's maybe it would be better to change the verbiage and say possible
Yeah,
match, or just so they understand that it's, because I just know sometimes how my district people think, and they're going to say like, well, this is who I want in there, but it's saying they're showing here and here and here. So that's my only concern, is to try to make it a little easier for them to grasp. So,
yeah. No, yeah, and I was looking through our documentation as well, Amanda, and I'm like, I wonder if we can just tweak that a little as well, but yeah, we haven't had much feedback about that one, and I'm not sure if people are really, recognizing it, or just, taking a look, as much when they do the matched employee. But yeah, I put a note down here that maybe we need to just kind of look at that a little bit more and maybe provide a better example or documentation or put something out there in the FAQ, or see if maybe we can change that note and make it just a bit more clear. Thank you. Okay. And let me take you to where that stuff's at while we're in there. So I'm going up to my users. I'm going to my groups. And here's where I have to be real careful because it always defaults to leave request. Um, and so I have to click on timesheets if I want to actually see my timesheet groups. So I find myself, going in here and, clicking on create or something, and I'm in the wrong one. But again, in here we do have the option here, and it is pretty convenient here, that it does say, hey, you can take this group and you can copy it over, this leave request group, and copy it over to a timesheet group. So yeah, so that's kind of where that's at. And take a look at our timesheet here. And same thing, we've got an option here where you can copy a timesheet group over to a leave request group. So it does work both ways here. And with the group chains, same thing. It defaults to the leave request. And so if, I can go in and copy a leave request group to a timesheet group. And here is where we were talking about the matched positions here a little bit ago, and that disclaimer that's at the bottom of it. But yeah, I think until we get more feedback from people, if they are having big concerns about, thinking they're in the timesheet group when they're really in the leave request group, I think it's going to stay here until maybe we get more feedback. If people would prefer that this may be a separate or separated out, maybe leave request groups and timesheet groups or something like that. If we're running into troubles with people, creating it in the wrong one. So, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. You guys are already comfortable with groups and group chains with leave requests. The timesheets behave the same way. Just nice having that convenient button to copy. Okay, any questions regarding the groups or group chains? So the next thing I'm going to move on to is I go back to my PowerPoint here, is the timesheet manager role. So you've got it enabled, the module turned on, you've got your groups and group chains set up, and now this information needs to be set up. So, and that is the responsibility of the timesheet manager or another elevated role like district manager or admin role. So this here just shows underneath the timesheet manager menu. They have the ability to escalate timesheet approvals. So that works just like escalating leave request approvals. They can pretty much bypass the workflow, escalate a timesheet. And I can see that being, a helpful option for a timesheet manager if they need to get this timesheet in so they can get payroll going, then they can escalate those and bypass the workflow and get those approved so that they can be exported. The setup type of things that need to be done is if they want to set up an automated period generation and automated timesheet creation along with that, they can do that. And then also, they have the ability to maintain the periods, the shifts, and the timesheet holidays. Are timesheet managers or supervisors able to enter a timesheet on another employee's behalf? I think so. I'm gonna see if Mary or Pat, you guys can look that up in the manual and see if we have that and answer that question. I appreciate it. I
Yes,
know they can go in and edit them, but I couldn't remember if they could to enter a timesheet. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go in and look at these options here. So I'm going to go back. Well, before we do that, I forgot I did have a few slides here. And the first thing we're going to touch upon is the automatic period generator. I would recommend that they do this and not create periods manually. So the automatic period generator, when they create one of those, this is kind of a screenshot of everything that is on that screen. And I put in little blurbs of what this information means. So let's go through this and then I can show you in the instance where this is at. And so in here, automatic generation running. So that's basically saying, are you ready to turn the automatic period generator on? So you would mark it to true. And then the generator is enabled and it will start creating the periods. So in my example here, I have it starting on a certain day. So I've got the 1st and the 15th are my periods. And so my first timesheet period, I want it to be, and this is an example starting November 1st. And then what I want it to do is I want it to create future periods and just one. I don't want to be putting in 10 or 12 because what happens is it'll go out there. It says it right here. For this instance, it will automatically create 2 timesheet periods, which will be displayed under the periods grid. So it's going to create the current period, 11/1 to 11/15, and it's also going to create the future period, 11/15 to 11/30. And both will be open by default. If you put in 10, it's going to create 10 time periods, and they're all open at the same time. So I have more of an explanation down here as to what happens when a period's closed. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. The actual closing time, when do you want a period to close? And so I have it closing at the very end of that, whatever day it's going to close. So at 11:59 p.m. And then my reminder, I want to remind people that timesheets are going to be closing. How much of an advance notice do I want? And I can use the drop down here to select that. The duration, so mine is semi-monthly, the 1st and the 15th. So obviously, whatever duration I have bi-weekly, it may change some of the options underneath here. Do I want to close on non-business days? So we've got options there. And a lot of these are explained in more detail in the documentation. If I have months to skip, if there's not going to be anyone in the district for the summer, I can say I want months to skip, like June, July, or July, August. So with the semi-monthly, this prompt changes because of this setting. So it's asking me for the first period ending date and the second period ending date. Obviously, if I chose bi-weekly, this would be different. My period closing day. When do I want my period closed? Well, if remember back when we were in the configuration, we could set that up to say 2 days after the period date. So I wanted to use that configuration setting. And so my configuration setting for this example was 3 days after the period end date. So I could change it if I want to, but I wanted to use what I had set up underneath configuration. Also, if I selected positions in here, what that will do is not only will it create the period, it's going to create the timesheets for those positions for that period. Those will be automatically created. So if the district doesn't want to automatically create timesheets for employees, then they will not want to put anything in here. Then that person will have to go in and create their timesheet manually. So with this period creation here and the automated period and selecting the future period, I kind of want to explain when I just set it up to create one future period, how does that work when things start closing, for the period? So so for this example, 11:1 through 11:15, and then 11:15 through 11:30. Those are the two periods that were created based on what I entered in here. So once the first period, the 11:1 through 11:15, automatically closes on the 18th, because I told it to close it 3 days after the period ends. The next period, 12:1 through 12:15, will automatically generate, because it will know to move on and create that new period, and that will be displayed under the periods grid. So, like for example, for Susan Dean, the one I've been picking on, her timesheet for the 12:1 through 12:15 period will be automatically created as well, because I have her underneath here. This is her actual position. And then once the second period, so that's that future period that was created, once that period is closed, and that again, that'll be closed on 12/3 at 11:59, because it's 3 days after the period ending. The next period, 12:16 to 12:31, will automatically generate, and that will be displayed under the period grid. So again, since I have her selected down here, her position, Susan's timesheet will be automatically created as well. So again, if you don't want timesheets to be automatically created, you wouldn't fill anything out underneath the positions.
Michelle, quick
So this,
question. I'm sorry.
yes.
Quick question on the positions. Often districts will change the position numbers, for different types of things. Will that follow suit, or will they need to go in here and update that? Let's say they change from position one, like you have showing, to a position two, so they can create a new position one, those types of things. How does that work through, please?
That's a good question, Heidi. I'm not 100% sure if they would have to go in here and make that. So when they're in payroll, they're adding a new position, or they're going in and change. Is that what they're?
Right. How sometimes they'll go in and they'll say, because everybody wants number one, maybe it's that district, and say cook is now going to become an aide, right? They're cook this year, they're going to be an aide next year. So they have an available position two. So they're moving this cook one to position two, creating a number one for the aide. Like I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a good question without testing it out to see. I'm thinking that they would have to go in here and add it, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, we'll check on that. That's a good question though.
Hey,
Thank you.
Michelle.
Yes.
Um, and not just in this screen, but in some of the other timesheet screens where you can add positions and whatnot. Is there thought of like expanding it out to where you could say add a pay group or um, department code or things along those lines? Because I'm just thinking like maybe even with Heidi's uh, example, if you have someone who was in the cook pay group and then they don't work that, you might not need to remove the position or change that because you just stop that position and then they won't flow over into the pay group.
Correct. I'm almost sure we have feedback request on that, or maybe even a core project issue on that one. I know that's been asked before. So yeah, I would probably create a ticket on that one just so that we can attach that and confirm that we have a feedback. And if we do, increase the times requested on that one. But
So,
that's a great suggestion.
so basically, I just need to be patient, is what you're telling me. I
Well,
understand.
the thing, no, the thing is too, Amanda, I mean, yeah, that's funny. But no, the thing is, when it comes to that, stuff, until somebody's actually in there and really starting to use it, that's where it helps. I know when I say feedback, people sometimes think, oh gosh, I don't know if that'll ever, come to fruition, but it will. I mean, we did a lot of we created a ton of feedback requests with lead requests when that first started, and the developers got those knocked out pretty quickly, even though they were feedback requests, because they realized the need. So we kind of start with the feedback request, and then like us, the support team, we watch that feedback request, and usually that feedback request turns into a core project issue pretty quickly. I know
No,
that. I think
you guys have been really great. I don't want you to think that I was just teasing a little bit because, you know, I asked for things, they're like, oh yeah, we already have that. I'm like, oh, okay. So someone beat me to it.
I can't remember for sure if we do, but unless I'm getting this mixed up with another option out there with pay groups, but it might be the expert option maybe. But yeah, I think it does make sense because then you don't have to be so specific with a certain position and you can be more general, with the pay group. But I know, Amanda, you had chicken not too long ago where I created a bunch of they were timesheet requests and they were good ones. And I know we discussed it during a sprint meeting, and I created feedback issues for it. And then I looked and Mark had already created core project issues and already has them scheduled, some of them for an
Yeah.
upcoming week. So
Unfortunately, Mark made the mistake of sitting near me at the OECN United conference, and I was like, "Hey!" And he's like, "Oh my gosh!" So
oh,
yeah,
that's good.
I've been because I've been in there. I have so many districts who want it and are so interested in using it. So I was testing and playing around to try to see how I could help them the best to utilize it as as they can and as it is. So I
Yeah.
just, anyways, yes, I will stop interrupting because I know I keep asking so many questions.
No, no, this is great. This is really good because that's what we need because, like we said, like I said at the beginning, this is still so new. And it's kind of reminding me of once, people really start using it, just like, when everyone was using leave requests, that we just got so much feedback. And that's what we need because we're not out there, you know, using this every day. And so when your districts are out there and they've got some big stumbling blocks and they're like, we really need this. That's where, the sport team, we keep an eye on those feedback issues to say, okay, this one's been requested quite a bit. And I know, Mark obviously does too, but we usually will then say something at our next sprint and say, hey, this one's, this is up to like 5 or 6 now. And and I don't think, these people are going to use this until we get this done. So we kind of poke the bear a little bit, and just say, hey, you guys, can you, maybe bump this up and put this on there? So no, we appreciate the feedback. So we've made note of this and yes, and yeah, if you want to create a ticket with the list of your feedback requests again, that would be wonderful. And we'll go out there, see if they're already out there, increase them, or if it's becoming, an issue that it needs to be done sooner rather than later, we'll discuss it at a sprint meeting. So thanks, everybody. All right. And so, yes, so this, just going through this, that automatic period generator will continue this cycle of automatically creating these periods. So because I put in one, it's basically creating one at a time, right? So once that period closes, then the next period opens, and then those periods will start appearing underneath the period grid. So if you had like 10 here, then it's, that's a lot of periods to be open at once in future periods. So, keeping this number more on the lower side may just help control that period grid a little bit better. So this, area down here just explains, how that behaves. And we do have that in the documentation as well, in case people are like, exactly, how does this work when I do the automatic period? And if I put in, and we had an example, I think of maybe 1 or 2 future periods, and we have that listed in there. So, so that may just help, when you're doing training, is kind of go through an example of how this happens. And let me go in there and show you what that looks like. And so in my timesheet periods here, I'm going underneath Timesheet Manager, and I'm going to go to my automatic period generator. And I think mine looks very similar to what's in that screenshot. So here I've got it, starting, I'm semi-monthly, starting on April 1st. I just have one future period. I do not have any positions selected on mine. I want the timesheet employees to create their timesheets manually. So this is all set up. It's using, probably using the whatever I have selected. I don't have it on edit, but going to edit here. So yes, using the, the 15th and the last day of the month. And then here, this is what I was looking for. But why it doesn't appear, it's just kind of blank, but it's using what I have set up in the configuration, which is 2 days after the period ending date. So I think that should display. So we may have to look into that a little bit. But once I enable this to true, then what happens then is my periods get created underneath the period grid. And like I said, they're both showing as open, closed is false. And that also, it does denote that these were auto-generated. And so I do have a slide just to talk about the periods a little bit more. It's the next one here. And with the actual periods here, and I'm just showing you, this is a screenshot of the period grid, and I have one open. And just some tips about this is, obviously, if you don't use the automatic period generator to create the periods, they can create them manually by clicking on create. So if they do not use the automatic period, they do have to be more vigilant about, making sure that their periods are created so that their timesheet employees can get their timesheets in. And so it basically explains here that you can create them. And also, I just have a note here about the close date and time. So I'm viewing a particular period here, and it will auto populate with the closing date and time if it's configured to automatically close via their timesheet period close configuration. So the description is an optional thing. When you're manually creating a period, you can put a description in. Otherwise, I don't believe a description is put in there, obviously, when an auto-generated period is created. So if you don't see a description here, again, that's one way to confirm it was auto-generated. The other way to know for sure is to make sure that this column is on the grid. And a period will be open by default when it gets created and will remain open until it either gets closed manually, which can be done in here, or via the automatic period closing. So when closing a period manually here, you'll see that a confirmation box will appear with a count of the timesheets that are inclusive of that period. There are various approval statuses as well as a total of the timesheets for that period. So if you close them manually, you'll get this box and you say yes, and the period's closed. Okay. Any further questions about periods?
Yep. So
Go
I
for it.
was playing around with this and I don't think I quite understood it. So you only wanna, when you're doing this, you only want to do one period in the initial generation setup, because I did it for like, oh, it's 26 pays, so I did 26 periods. So by doing it just one, that actually will automatically open and close, and it just keeps repeating until you stop it.
You got it.
Okay,
Exactly. That's kind of what this part explains in that prior slide,
got
is
it.
that kind of tell you what's going to happen. So that's what I would do.
Okay.
That way you kind of have a little more control and you don't see all of those periods at once. And
Well, and I, because I don't, because it's just in my dummy data right now. I don't think the generation was working and closing correctly and opening correctly because I created them all at once. So, okay, that is actually a
yeah,
lot more helpful, and I think my districts will like that because,
yeah, because it really will do the work for them. Really, when you think about it, they're only going to have one automatic generation period on their automatic generator grid, right? It's because they set it up this. So when they look at their automatic period generator grid, they're just going to have one entry. That's okay, because what it's doing, like in this example, is it will continue to create those periods when those other periods close. And it's basically kind of doing it, you're setting it up that you have the current and the future. And then basically it's just going from there. I think some people get worried, like, let me go back to the instance, that they need this filled out too. Like, oh, I need to, automate a bunch of periods. No, you're only really um, doing this, once. And then it will, because you've got it automated, it will continue to add additional periods under the period grid as you close those prior periods. Does that make sense? Hope I'm
absolutely,
explaining.
yeah,
Okay.
that does. I guess I'm like you said, and we're all new, and I don't think the documentation was, when I was playing with it,
Mhm.
was fully in depth in that, because I didn't
Yeah.
understand or grasp that it was, if you set it for just one, it's going to keep repeating itself. I thought, well, you got to tell it how many times, and so
Mhm.
okay, that makes sense, and that's great, because when I first talked about it with districts, they're like, well, it'd be nice if it automatically opened and automatically closed. And the way I had set it up, there was no automatic open. They were just all open. So that is
Yeah.
very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. And I thought that same way, Amanda, when I first started. I thought I had to like either go in and, same thing as you, put in increase that number and make it, or, like you said, 26. But when we talked about it more with the developers, I'm like, oh, okay, that's how that works. I'm like, gosh, that seems kind of crazy. An automatic period generator, yeah, I get that, but it all depends on when it's closed, and when it's closed, it kickstarts the next period and opens that up. So unless I'm totally way off base, but that's kind of how we've played around with it and how it's been working. So it'll create those periods automatically, which makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome. So thank you for that explanation.
yep, absolutely. And like I said, we have these slides out here, and we have them, as part of the PowerPoint. And if we do need to make any updates to some of the stuff that we have noted here, we will. But this part here might be a good one to note regarding how those periods behave. Because I really thought, when I first did this, oh, it's just one and done. And it's only going to create that next period. And then I have to create another automatic period generator, but I don't. It'll continue to kick on and automatically create the next period until I turn this off, basically. Okay, moving on. So the next thing I want to talk about, and we're still in the timesheet manager, We basically set up automatic periods they're creating. And the next thing we want to talk about are the shifts and creating shifts for your timesheet employees. So obviously before an employee can create a timesheet, we recommend that obviously a shift be created for their position. So I believe this is the one where I may be thinking we have feedback issues about maybe making it more of maybe more options in here right now. When the user, creates their timesheet, they're obviously going to create a name for that. So this is for all of the cooks, and it could be just first shift first shift cooks, right? Because we have a start time from 7 a.m. until 3 p.m. We have a break time here. We add that in. The hours worked in the day. I'll get to flexible shift here in a little bit. And then the actual positions for this shift. And so down here is where we can enter in the positions and add them. And then it will them on here. So basically right now for the cook's timesheet shift, the only person we have in here right now is Susan Dean. So we do have some issues here. And I wanted to make note of some of these outstanding issues because like I said, this is still very new to everybody and we still have JIRA issues to improve this. We do have an outstanding JIRA issue to handle split shifts if they work 7 to 9 and then they don't work again until 1 to 3. So core issue 1289 is going to help out with that. The other one is 895 here. Let me go to my overview page here. So yeah, 895 is going to improve selecting a position when creating a shift. Right now, when I'm selecting positions, I can only do it on the employee ID number, and I don't know those by heart. So I need to be able to select by the person's name. And so 895 is going to also put that in there so that they can select these a little bit. It's more user-friendly. The flexible shift, if a shift is created with the flexible shift enabled, so if this is check marked, the start and ending times and hours work fields will be disabled. And that makes sense. This person works different times throughout their shift or throughout their period, their timesheet period. They may work, 7 to 3 for a couple days, and then the next 2 days they may work 11 to 7 or something like that. And so we want them to be able to put in whatever they want on their timesheet regarding their start and ending times. So by selecting a flexible shift, these will be grayed out. The break time, I believe, can still be entered. And then, obviously set up the rest of it. And then when that employee creates their timesheet, their start and ending times will be blank on each item. So once they enter those in, so day 1, they work 7 to 3, it will automatically calculate the hours. And based on the break time, if it's a half-hour break, then it'll automatically calculate 7.5 hours. And then they'll, enter in the next one. They worked, 6 to 2, and same thing. It'll automatically calculate those. So that's what that flexible shift will do. So if you've got, certain employees that are on a flexible shift, you want to create a timesheet shift for them, then that's the way to go. Okay. And I'm going to take you into there. I don't think I have another. I do not. And I'm thinking too, this is maybe where we have maybe other options to put in something more than just the position. I'm not 100% sure on that though. But we may have some feedback issues about that. So I'm going to take us back in to the actual menu so you can see where those shifts are at. In my instance is very basic. I've been just kind of starting on this new instance and kind of playing around with it. And so all I've done is just create one for the shift for the cooks. So it looks very similar to the setup that we just saw on the slide. So basically, if I've got a certain person for that, I do have Susan listed in here. She does work, it's first shift for the cooks. She does work 7 to 3. And so what happens then is when Susan creates her timesheet, all the days for that period will all say 7 to 3. It will also display the break time and her total hours in the day that she worked. Now, can she go in and edit those on her timesheet? She sure can. So it just pre-fills everything in there. But if she needs to go in and adjust the time and stuff like that, remove some of those days for some reason, she can do that. But it will automatically populate for the entire period except for weekends, obviously. And I'll show you that here when we go in to actually create one. Any questions regarding shifts before we move on to the next option under Timesheet Manager? The last one is the Timesheet Holidays. So again, this is another like pre-configured option. I'm thinking, basically automatic period shift timesheet holidays are things that the timesheet manager would want to set up before the district gets started using timesheets. The timesheet escalated obviously is after if they need to escalate somebody's timesheet. So I'm kind of, just focusing on the pre-setup. And the timesheet holidays works very similar to leave request blackout field. So I do have a screenshot on this, so I want to go back to that. Okay, so this is the information I have regarding timesheet holidays. And one thing before we even get started is we do have a feedback request to have timesheets recognize USPS or ESS job calendars so that it can recognize non-work days from calendars. But that again, right now is a feedback request until we get more, obviously, feedback from everybody regarding that. They're not even sure if that's a possibility at this point, the developers. So that's why they requested we make it a feedback issue until they do further research into it. But that would be very helpful, that the timesheets would recognize those non-work days. Otherwise, right now, they would have to add them in as a quote holiday in order for it to recognize those non-work days. So in here, I have an example of creating one. I clicked on create, and this is the menu that I get. And I just put one in for the Easter holiday. And these options here are very similar to what you see in the leave request blackout dates. Do you want to notify the manager if somebody does try to create a timesheet for that blackout period? Obviously enabled, and this would be for the entire day. So it isn't something specific to like a 2-hour delay. This is just a full day off for the Easter holiday. And then, because we checked entire day, it prompts us for the start and ending dates. So we just have the one day. And then the timesheet activity types. So if I create a blackout day and I include the regular type activity type, that means that the regular type is the only type inclusive of the holiday. So basically that means the other types like exception and overtime items, they could still create timesheets with those activity types on that blackout day. So if I don't want them to be able to do any type of activity type on that blackout date, then I believe I can either not put anything in here, I think, and it will make sure that it will basically include regular, exception, and overtime, or I can go in and specify all three. But I feel like I think if you leave this blank, it will pretty much restrict anything, any activity, timesheet activity types from allowing you to enter in a timesheet item on a blackout day. Oh, it says right here, sorry. Leave empty to select all timesheet activities. So here we go. So like I said, for non-work days on the USPS job calendar, you may want to create timesheet holidays for these. And that way you avoid anybody creating a timesheet line item for that day. So when a user creates a timesheet, then if this timesheet holiday, so they create a timesheet period that falls within the Easter holiday, it will automatically denote that holiday item on the timesheet with an HO to tell you that it's basically a blackout date. I know someone's going to ask me, why is it timesheet holiday? Why aren't these called blackout dates? And that's because when this all was started with the focus group, they wanted they wanted to specify timesheet holidays. And so I think until we get more feedback from people saying, can we change this to blackout holidays? Or until maybe we have the ability to look at the job calendars, I think it's going to stay as it is until we get more feedback from everybody on this. So even though it's a holiday, it's basically a blackout period. That makes sense.
Hey, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Although looking at the job calendars sounds like a fabulous idea initially, I was thinking through like what could be like the bad impact on that. And I can
Okay.
think of case scenarios where we still have districts that, let's say they didn't get their start date to their compensation included on the first payroll, right? And so one of our tips and tricks for that is to go in and add days, right, to their job calendars to get those included to make it up on their days worked for the compensation, then to also change the amount earned. I could see that being an issue if we were to and say that they didn't notice it until December or January or something like that, when we have those days available to do that. That would be my only like, oh my gosh, how would you address that piece with timesheets? Because then I would think that would kind of hose that up a little bit. So just a thought on that. I'm glad it's just a feedback issue right now because that would almost take that away and we would have to do adjustments on the compensations then.
Gotcha. And yeah, and I think those are the things that like the developers would like dig into to see if this is even a possibility. Like, well, wait a minute, what about this scenario? What about this scenario? So yeah, I totally get it. Yep. Any other questions on the timesheet holiday setup? Or feedback regarding the naming of it or anything like that? Okay. Go back to my PowerPoint here, or my instance, just to show you. And where that's add. So yeah, like I said, these are basically all the different options available underneath the timesheet manager. These bottom four are kind of the startup process to get them going. And then the only other option that the timesheet manager has here underneath this menu is escalating one, which, like I said, works just like leave request escalation. So that kind of basically, if I go back to my guidelines here and the initial setup, I think we pretty much tackled everything that kind of happens when first setting up a district to use timesheets, and went through, all the configuration, the workflow, and what the timesheet manager. I probably need to add the holidays, the blackout dates on here as well, because I kind of consider that set up one as well. Okay. And Mary's been answering questions. Thank you, Mary. Appreciate it. So I'm going to move on then, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. And what we're going to talk about next is the actual timesheet entries. Obviously, when timesheets are enabled, the timesheet manager option became a menu option, and there's also a timesheets menu option. And so these are the options that are listed underneath timesheets. There is a My Timesheet, obviously. So for Susan Dean, when she logs in, she's going to be able to create timesheets and see her own timesheets on there, just like leave requests and my leave requests. There is the ability for the supervisor to obviously approve, and they'll be able to see an option underneath the timesheet menu for the supervisor timesheets. There'll be a timesheet approval option for them listed right here. That's going to be on the timesheet menu to allow them to approve or mass reject timesheets. That's also located on the home screen. So it behaves very similar to when approvers approve leave requests. They can either do it from the home screen or from that leave request approval. So we have those same options underneath timesheets. District timesheets. So for those with an elevated access that are able to see everyone's timesheets, we have an option for them to view those. And then the timesheet export. So that's the one that we just changed the options, improved them. So we'll go into those. And then the other one is an overview report, just a spreadsheet report, just of the specific time period. And it just shows you more of summarized data on that. So those are the menu options. And what we're going to do is kind of tackle this as somebody that's actually going in and entering one. Then the supervisor's approving, and then the timesheet manager or whoever has the ability to export the timesheet so that it can get posted into USPS. All right. So before we get started actually going in, again, I think I said this yesterday too, I'm a very visual person, and I just like seeing like everything that option can do on one screen with like a picture of that screen basically. And so what this is a picture of a timesheet entry. So this is Susan going in and creating her timesheet. And I just want to talk about all the little tips and stuff in here when they're going in and creating their timesheet. So obviously, periods have been set up, shifts have been created. And so for this example here, her shift is from 8 to 4. So when she creates her timesheet, that whole thing, all the days except for the weekends are automatically populated in here. And so, and it automatically puts in, if we have a break time on that shift, that will be included in here. And also giving you the total hours worked. I know we had a setting back in the configuration that we talked about regarding overtime. And if they do have an overtime selection, overtime item in here, if it requires them to enter in a reason, they would put in a reason here. And then way off to the right, you're going to see an export option here. And that's just indicating right now that has not been exported. So there's just something that they're working on. And then once this timesheet does get exported, all of these will be changed to a green check mark. So where, what you're seeing. This is basically the timesheet details is what I'm on. I'm looking at my timesheet. There is also a timesheet approval trail, very similar to the leave request approval trail, just showing the workflow process. So let's kind of talk about some of these things that are in red here. So like I said, the timesheet will be pre-filled with the information. You can click on an item in order to edit it. So here is an example of either adding one, or I can actually click on an existing one and it's going to look like this then. They are improving this a little bit, but one thing I noticed, just playing around in there is that sometimes it's very difficult to actually add an item. And I'm sorry, way down at the bottom here, it's hard to see. It's a little plus sign and a minus sign. So if I'm wanting to edit an existing item, I would just click on it and it will open up that item and allow me to make changes to it. But if I want to add an item, there's a plus sign down here. And then that will go in and open up an item. And that's where it's a little clunky right now and how that works. It doesn't put the focus on that new item. I have to like kind of scroll down to it. And then I realize I'm clicked on it. I get click happy, like it didn't add it. It didn't add it. And here it did 3 different times. It just didn't set the focus down at the bottom of the grid. So I know they have a Jira issue to get that fixed, or they may have fixed it already. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, that's where you would go in and add an additional item. So if you worked overtime on an existing day, and you can put that same date. So let's say I worked 7 hour or my regular shift on the 7th, but then I need to go in and I had 2 hours of overtime. I could create one for the same for February 7th and put from 4 to 6, add the hours, and select overtime so that, and then again, if it's required that I enter in a reason, I put in a reason there and I can enter in my additional item on the timesheet. So you'll notice too, when you're selecting the activity type here, I know that's kind of hidden, but behind here, it's the activity type. You only have certain ones that you're allowed to select. Regular, exception, and overtime are the 3. And when that does get exported out and listed on the CSV file, it will be in the correct format, those activity types, for it to be recognized when it gets imported into USPS, into the attendance import. I know sometimes they're like, well, wait a minute, these look a little different than what we're seeing on the attendance import. And it does here, but it will match up to the correct activity codes when it gets imported into USPS. So yeah, so that's basically how you go in and add. You can also go in and remove any items. I think you need to check it first, and then you can hit the minus button and it will remove that item. So like I said, it is a little difficult right now when adding new ones, but they're aware of it and they've created a Jira issue to improve that a little bit. Just some other notes over here. If the employee has an approved or exported leave request that's inclusive of this time period, that leave request item is added to the timesheet after they create it. I know. I wish it was listed in there when they're creating it. Like you could just pull it in, but if they could do that, they would, but they can't. So it does show up after they create it. So you're looking and I'm like, I know I created a leave request for the 10th. Why is it showing irregular time here? And it will. Once you create the timesheet, it will change this to your actual sick leave day. So that's one thing that timesheet employees just have to get comfortable with is when you create your timesheet and you click on the create button before you submit it, because there's an extra step to submit it. Before you submit it, please look it over and make sure that any overtime you entered in, any holidays, any leave request information is in there correctly. So that way everything looks good before you actually submit the timesheet to go through the workflow process. So, and I think that's another reason why it's an extra step, because you want to ensure that the employee looks their timesheet over real well before they actually go in and submit it to be approved. Because right now it's just, once they click create, it's just going to sit there and it's not going to move until they go in, submit it. So a user can recall a submitted timesheet, as long as it hasn't been approved. So let's say they go in, create the timesheet, they look it over, or thought that they looked it over well, submitted it, and then went in the next day and went, oh no, that's wrong. I need to recall that because I forgot to add my overtime. As long as it hasn't been approved, then they can go in then, and that period obviously is still open. Then they can go in and recall that, edit it, make the changes they need, get over again, and then resubmit. So a user may delete their timesheet as long as it's at an initiated status as well, and that period is open. So there are different things that the user can still do before it gets before it moves on to the next step. And like I said before too, is that a big difference between an approver and a timesheet and an approver and a leave request is that an approver in a timesheet has the ability to edit a leave, a timesheet where they aren't able to edit a leave request. So that's something too that an approver can go in and make changes to the timesheet too before it moves on to the next step. All right.
Hey,
So,
Michelle.
yes.
Hey, I just want to bring it to everyone's attention that's on the call, just because I've been working with these for a while. So, I had originally put in a ticket regarding if there was leave in the middle of the day. So a person works in the morning, then they have a doctor's appointment and they leave for a couple hours in the middle of the day, and then they come back to work. Currently,
Okay.
the timesheet is not bringing in that third entry. So the workaround for that is that I'm having them go in and add a line for the last part of the day of their regular work hours. So that's all fine and dandy for right now.
Okay.
So this past payroll, I had the opposite, where someone took leave at the beginning of the day, came in, worked in the middle of the day, and then had sick leave in the afternoon. So the timesheet did not bring in that afternoon sick leave. So when you add that line item, you cannot add sick because that's pulling from the other side. So my workaround for that is not anything that I'm happy with. But I had her go in and cancel her 2 leave requests for that day and put it in as a lump sum. And then I just notated it on my files because it's just not an accurate representation of their actual workday. So I put a ticket in this morning because I've just been really busy this week, but I put a ticket in this morning, but I just want to make everyone there aware, because kind of like the absences, there's a tendency for employees as well as supervisors to really not take a real good look at the timesheets and just kind of approve them. And once they're approved, then we have to delete the timesheet, and then they have to go back through the whole process again, and it's quite cumbersome.
Mhm.
So that's all I have to say about that.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, these are the gremlins that we have to work out, right? Not,
Yeah.
knowing how they're using these. So yeah, thank you for creating that ticket. And these are the things that, you don't think about, what they're actually putting in, to their timesheet, all these different scenarios that we have to kind of figure out how we're going to handle that in the system.
Yeah.
So I'm glad
The
you
first one
mentioned
was
that.
an easy workaround, but the one this week was not.
Yeah.
So just so that people
Okay.
are aware that, if you're trying to have 3 line items, to really take a good look at that timesheet, because it's currently, and I know you guys I know SSD to get it fixed. That's not an issue, but just anybody that's currently working with them, if there's a split day like that, that's not half and half, that to take a real good look at those timesheets because they're probably not accurate.
You know,
Other than that, I love it. I think it's a great program.
thank you. Yeah, it's just these little things that, that we have to get worked out here as to how the timesheet can work a little bit better, for them so that things get listed and reported accurately. So, but yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, things are gonna slip through, fall through the cracks. I mean, people think that they, their timesheet was correct. Heck, I've done that, creating a leave request, like, oh, just I wasn't paying attention and it didn't go through correctly. So I can so see that happening, and also approvers not catching it either until it gets to we don't want anybody getting paid incorrectly. We don't want leave requests to be missed. So yeah, those are the things that need to still work through in order to make everything.
Do you know if because you know how like on the timesheets it doesn't pull in those absences until they've been fully approved. And I'll throw this in as a feedback issue, but it just randomly came to my head. Is there any way that it could pull those in as like pending to where they just look a little different?
So you're saying when they're actually creating their timesheet, they haven't during
Yeah,
the
they
creation process.
they create their timesheet, but that leave has not been fully approved, so it doesn't pull into the timesheet. I'll throw that in as a feedback issue.
Okay.
Because
I'm just
when you create the timesheet, if there's leave out there that hasn't been approved, it doesn't pull into the timesheet at all.
It doesn't, no.
So I'm wondering if it could pull in and I don't know, be a different color, you know, how it is on ESS, be a different color or something like that to let everybody know that, yep, that leave is out there, but it hasn't been fully approved.
But I think, I mean, and this is, would it be an issue though? I mean, should that be pulled in if it hasn't been approved yet, into the timesheet? Even after, because I'm just thinking approved and exported, that fall within that time period should be the only ones that should be even listed on the timesheet until it gets fully approved, right? I mean, or.
Yeah, and I'm looking. And it all goes back to whoever's approving stuff. Are they approving the leave? They should be approving the leave before they're approving the timesheets.
Right.
That should be the correct order.
Yes, correct. Anyone
All right,
else
I'll
have
let you
any
get back to your
thoughts?
presentation. Sorry.
That's okay. No, this is good. Good conversation here. Anyone else have any feedback on that one? I think it's going to be, an added responsibility, obviously, onto the approver. When, they were, handling leave requests right now. Now you're getting into, timesheets with your employees that it will be an added responsibility for the approver to say, okay, I need to look here. I've got timesheets coming at me. I've got leave requests. I need to see if these leave requests are on the next timesheet and approve these or reject them or whatever they need to do. So it does fall on the approver to kind of keep a track of both the leave request and timesheet entries. All right. So let me get back here. I think this next screenshot I have here is just a timesheet grid. And this is all the timesheets for, I think, Susan here. And so she's looking at her My Timesheets basically and looking at where everything, what she has out there, what's been approved, what's been exported. And I know this probably isn't a very good example because it's in my test instance, but a lot of these old ones should already have an exported status on them. But just to talk about what you're seeing on this grid. So And you'll notice that some things get basically shut off based on, where the status is of that timesheet. So a user can edit their timesheet as long as the approval status is initiated. So you see that right here where I can edit an initiated one, but obviously once it's been approved, I can no longer. So once the timesheet has been submitted to the approval workflow, so once they click on submit, they can no longer edit it at that point. They can go in, I believe, and recall it to go back in and edit it, but they can't go in and actually edit it after they submit it until they recall it. So once submitted, if the timesheet has not been, I just said that, has not been approved, the user may recall the timesheet. So I don't have any in here right now underneath that submitted status here. So that's why the recall option is not enabled. But they can do that. When they recall that submitted timesheet, they can go in and make any additional changes. It does take it back to an initiated status, which makes sense. They recalled it because they want to edit it. So it takes it back to an initiated status. And then the user has to remember, though, once they make those changes, they have to resubmit it for approval. Sometimes they forget that they have to do that resubmit option. The delete, user may delete their timesheet as long as it's at an initiated status and that period is open. And then there is a print approval trail report. That's what this download button is. It allows them to look at the approval trail for that particular timesheet. So who has approved it, and the whole trail, just like our leave request approval trail. Okay. So we'll get into this one here in a little bit. But what I want to do is just kind of go back into that instance, and we're going to play around with this a little bit here. I'm going to go back to my timesheet. Oh. And I'm in my test instance, which is really, I don't have a whole lot of entries in here right now. But I did want to go in and actually go in as Susan and create an actual timesheet here, just to kind of take you guys through the process here. So I'm going to log in her. And so just kind of looking at, I do have, a period set up. I have a shift set up for her. And so when I click on my timesheet, she doesn't have anything right now. So this is her first timesheet that she is going to be doing. So she's got her My Timesheet options. That's what the user is going to see. As long as, like I said, they're set up as timesheet required in payroll. They have an ESS account, which they probably do if they're doing leave requests. And that their supervisors filled in and in the USPS site as well, underneath that position. Just kind of looking at maybe her leave requests here, just to see what she has setting out here. She does have some leave requests setting out here, so some of these may fall within that period that we're going to do this for. So if I'm creating a timesheet period for the 1st through the 15th, I do see an approved sick leave request here on the 11th. So that should pull in when we create that timesheet. So let's go down to my timesheets and let's give this a whirl. So the period is the 1st through the 15th. And I cannot select a period unless that period's been created. And then for my position, it's looking at that, it's pretty much looking at, the positions that I have and what's been set up underneath the shift position. And I'm going to click on create. And it's going to pull in, obviously I've selected cook, so that should be here. And then it's going to, based on my shift, it's going to populate all of that. So looking good so far. And you'll notice too, as I'm going down here, it skips the 5th and the 6th because those are weekends. And then again, it skips the 12th and the 13th as well because those are weekends. So here's where I was talking about where you could go in and click on one of these and make any changes. So if for some reason she worked 8 to 4 that day instead of 7 to 3, can be updated. If we need to make any changes, an hourly employee and she only works 7 to 1 that day, that can be done, and it should calculate the hours worked and things like that. Also, if I wanted to actually add a day, I can add a timesheet line item. And so I would just click on this. And that's where they're working on this a little bit. It didn't like pull me down to that particular row right away. I had to scroll down to get there. But if I wanted to say that I did work on maybe the 12th, I can go ahead and use the date picker there, pick the 12th, and I did work 7 to, let's say, noon that day. It doesn't automatically calculate the hours here. And I do need to also say what type of activity type it is. And again, I've got 3 different ones to choose from. I'm going to pick overtime, or I'm going to pick exception here. And that's the default setting, which makes sense. So I'm going to put in 5 hours here, and I didn't have any break time. And that takes care of that one. There's no like saving that item, at the end here. It just automatically, what you put in here is it will save that. And like I said, I did have a sick leave, I think on the 11th, but I'm not going to see that right away here. And it was an approved one. So once I go ahead and create this, it will create the timesheet and it should pull that in. And so right now it's at an initiated status. So it's not going anywhere until I go in and actually submit this, which is this option right here. I want to view it first. And this is what I really would like, users to do, is just kind of look through before they actually go and hit the submit, is just kind of look through this. Poor Mark, I've been like saying, and another thing, could we make this larger so that you can see more rows at once? And so I know he's got, can't remember if it's a core project or if it's a feedback request to make this a little bit larger. I'm like, I was hoping maybe we could at least see, the whole period first, and then any additional ones, if we need to, we can scroll down for those extra days. But if we can see all the line items inclusive of that period, that'd be great. And so, yeah, so looking at here, I did see here that it did overwrite the 11th with my sick day. Also on the 12th, it does have my extra time there. And so if everything looks correct with what I have here, I'm actually able to go from this area and submit it for approval. My timesheet approval trail, I don't think it's going to show anything yet until I actually submit it, which makes sense because that pretty much starts the workflow process. So, if I'm not ready and I need to make some changes, I can go in and edit it. If I'm just way off on everything on this one, I can go in and delete it. But I'm just going to go ahead and submit this for approval. It tells me that the timesheet was submitted for approval. And if the emails are set up, I believe that Susan would get an email saying that she submitted her timesheet for approval. And then Brenda Mullins is the one then that will go in and approve this timesheet. So once Brenda approves it, it's going to change this from submitted to approved. So let's go now, and that's about everything. Oh, here's where I can recall this. If I submitted it, I'm like, oh, I forgot that extra day, I can recall it. That'll set it back to an initiated status and it'll allow me to edit. That will turn on and allow me to edit that timesheet, make any further changes that I need to, resubmit, and I'm good to go. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I am going to log in as Brenda.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
It's Jason with Meta. Real quick before you do that, can you recall that line real quick so you can edit it?
Sure can.
And then go into that line, if you don't mind, the 5 hours that you created, the little anomaly
Yes.
there. So we've got one district using timesheets, and they're just kind of testing it out now with 5 or 6 of their tech employees, and they have them set up all as flexible shift. So when they
Okay.
create, they go in and their shift, it creates their, they have a period and a shift and it creates that all, but they discovered that, first of all, if they only worked 3 or 4 days, they have to delete the one blank line or it won't let them submit. That's number one.
Okay.
But then number two, and that's fine. Number two, if you edit that EXC line, you
Yeah.
had to manually put in the hours worked. It didn't calculate that automatically. Is that true for all flexible shifts as far as you know?
As far as I know, yes. Yeah, and we'll mark that one down, Jason, to see if there's something that it can go in and actually calculate it instead of them having to do it for them. We might even have an issue for that already, but we'll write that one down because if I put in my start and ending time, I was kind of hopeful that the hours work would just calculate itself. So
So if you put in a
um,
break time of 0.5, because we had a situation this morning with them where they had one person whose hours worked did not include the break times, but everyone else, their hours worked did include the break times. And what I'm thinking now is that one employee didn't manually put that in correctly in the hours worked line when he was creating those, because the supervisor was able to recall it, revise it, change it to the correct hours, and resubmit it, and it looked like everyone else's. So I'm thinking that they have to know that hours worked would not include the break time when they do have a break time in that column. Does that make sense? Is that right?
mhm,
So
yeah,
that would change the hours worked there to 4.5. But if you saved it with 5 and 0.5, it would not be correct.
correct. We do have, Mary's got here, we do have ESS 1288 that's going to calculate hours worked based on start, ending times, and break time. I don't know if we have that
For
scheduled.
flexible people.
And yeah, we'll have to confirm that it's for flex time, for flexible schedules and for regular schedules as well. I will
Awesome.
check on that.
Okay.
Uh, Mary and Pat, if you wouldn't mind jotting that down, in case it's not on the JIRA issue about flexible shifts, we'll make sure of that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to log in as Brenda now and approve this. Wait a minute, first I have to submit it again. You almost got me on that one, Jason. Okay. And then it's another thing as well is that you've got, leave request approval, and then you got timesheet approval. I don't know how many times I've been in here like, where's the timesheet? I got to click on timesheet first in order to see it. So again, another thing that approvers have to get used to is that when they start using timesheets at their district, the approver has to make sure that they click on the approver. It's convenient, right? Because it is right here. And they can click on either one. But again, too, it's convenient because they can say, okay, here's my timesheet period. Do I have any leave requests that I haven't approved yet within that period? I can click on leave requests and take a look at those. That is one, I think, easy way for them to check that out. But I'm going to go ahead and approve this one. And so Brenda has approved it. And again, Brenda's got, she can approve it here and she can also approve it underneath the timesheet approval. And also as an approver, if I click on, she's got leave request approval, and then she's got the timesheet approval roles. And so obviously because of that timesheet approval role, she's got the supervisor timesheet area here as well, where she can see all of her staff's timesheets in here with their current status. So with that too, and I totally blew past that, but she can go in and edit those timesheets as well. And now that she's approved it, she can't, but before she approved it, she could have gone in and made any changes to Susan's timesheet before she submitted it. So there's really not a whole lot to the approver part. So do you guys have any, I mean, you guys are so comfortable with the leave request approvers. Is there anything that you've encountered, you have questions on regarding the timesheet approvers? And we do have all of this documented as well in the documentation regarding the different approval process. And again, underneath that timesheet guideline, if I go back to this, I'm still in the initial setup here. So let me go back to our timesheet guideline. We're basically in this area where we're entering, approving, and exporting timesheets. And this is pretty much the part I'm at right now, just saying they can go to the timesheet supervisor timesheet grid, or they can go in and on the home screen or via the timesheet approval and view, edit, approve, or reject their staff's timesheets. So we're getting there. And obviously when Susan logs back in, I think she was the only one, Brenda was the only one, the single final approver. So that timesheet is now in an approved status, and now it can be exported. And that's the last thing we're going to cover is the export. It is very new, and I really haven't had a lot of playing around with it. So I thought we would do this together and kind of try out the different options in the export and kind of going through them together and see what the CSV file looks like afterwards. So we're going to try a few. So before we do, go back to my slideshow here, and got a lot of information here regarding the timesheet export. So all the timesheets have been done for that timesheet period, and they've all been approved, and it's time to export them. So what we're going to do is we are going to use that timesheet export option, which right now is currently under the timesheet menu. I don't know if that location will change, but we have got a lot of improvements that are going to be made to this, and some of them were done this last release. So this is like the actual timesheet menu, the export menu. And so when I click on that, it's going to ask me for the period that I want to export my timesheets for. And if I want to specify a specific employee, I can do that. And it will just include that employee's timesheets on the grid below. So this grid below is basically showing me who is going to be included in the export. So if I want to do further filtering, I can by selecting specific employees. Now, I know you're going to ask me, what about, other options other than employees? We have JIRA issues for that. I believe we have JIRA issues for pay groups, maybe building departments. I'm not 100% sure all of them. But yeah, make this a little bit more general too, and not just so specific on a certain employee. Being able to export a pay group. I think maybe appointment type, maybe. I can't remember, but we do have JIRA issues for all of that to enhance the filtering and stuff so that you can select not just by the employee. So like I said, once the filtering is done up here, this is all the filtering. And you'll notice that some of this filtering, there was an extra filter option here before the last release that we removed. because we improved the actual export timesheet options. So when you click on export timesheets, you're going to get this menu. And so this is what I want to talk about, is what you're seeing here. Because it does, it looks different, very different from what we had before. But we've had questions about specific things and how it just wasn't reporting stuff the way people wanted it to or correctly. And so we made a lot of improvements to hopefully get all the different ways you want to export available to you. So this first one right here, mark all timesheets as exported. This basically means that if you have any items on the timesheet that haven't been marked as exported yet, and this includes holidays and leave types, they will be updated to an exported status. So let's say you exported a timesheet and it had some holidays, had some leave, and it had a bunch of exceptions and stuff like that on it, and you exported it out. Well, the holidays and the leaves will not be included on the export. So they are accounted for in another way. The leave requests were already exported through a leave request. The holiday items are not included because they're accounted for on the USPS job calendar. So those remain on the timesheet as approved and so that timesheet remains on the grid until all of the items on that timesheet are marked with an exported status. So that's what this does. I kind of call it the cleanup option. And you can check this along with your export and activity types that you want selected so that it does it all in one step. So if I know I've got, exceptions and overtime that I want to export out, but I want the whole thing to show that it was exported, then I want to make sure that I have this check marked at the same time. If I don't, that's fine. It'll stay on the grid. And if I'm like, I know I exported the exceptions and the overtime items on that timesheet, why is it still sitting out there? It's probably because if you go and look at the timesheet, then you'll have these leftover ones. If you didn't, export regular time because you don't need to, and holiday and leave out items on there, and you just want to make sure that the whole timesheet gets updated with an export status, you could just go in and just select those, click on mark all timesheets exported, and it will update the status of those line items. So then you go and look at the timesheet afterwards, all the items on the timesheet show exported status. So that's just something to keep in mind, that this is kind of just like a catch-all. It'll go out there and just kind of clean things up. So that's what this area pretty much explains. The export type is, the mark all timesheets was on the original before we made the improvements on the last release. So it's behaving the same way. This is where we made the changes. And we have an export type and we have an activity type. So at least you have to select one of these on each. So you have to select an export type and you have to select an activity type. So let's talk about the export types first here. So we have 3 different options. So you can export payments with attendance. So this is going to include items for payments based on what you selected down here on the activity. And it will also include attendance. So on that CSV file, there is a column U that is marked for attendance, and it will be marked as Y for yes, to include it for the attendance posting in USPS. And there also will be a compensation label in column Y to show it'll include the compensation label in there. So if you select to export all items for payment and attendance purposes, that's what it's going to do. It's going to include your regular, your exception, your overtime items on the spreadsheet, and it's going to mark them for attendance, and it's also going to mark their compensation label. So if you go in then to the USPS attendance and you select, for it to be in the current or the future posting, those items, the regular items would be included. So that's, one, and I know for, most of these, you're probably going to use the export exception and overtime items only. And maybe, for those that you want payments to be included. So the payments without attendance, this is going to include items for payments, again, based on what I selected down here, but it's only going to do payments without attendance only. It will not include attendance in there. So on that CSV file, no attendance, the column U is going to be marked for no. Their attendance information, we're assuming, has already been accounted for on their job calendar in USPS. But the compensation label will be included in column Y. So again, if I have maybe regular and exception hours that I want to pay on, then I'm thinking I am going to, but I don't need to worry about attendance. Then those regular exception hours were already on days that I have marked as days on my job calendar, but I have extra hours for that day. So in that type of situation, I'm doing payments without attendance, and I'm selecting export exception and overtime items only. I know it's just kind of like have these things sink in and kind of play around with them, right? Get comfortable with them. The last one is attendance without payments. So in this type of situation, I have and it's only going to include items for attendance only. And obviously it's based on, the activity that option that I selected again. And on that spreadsheet, it's going to mark column U as Y or yes, but the compensation label is not included because I'm only dealing with attendance. So let's talk about, again, these activity options in a little more detail. So our activity options, so like I said, you have to select one export type and one activity type. So for this first one here, basically it's going to export all regular, exception, and overtime. So those will all be included on the CSV file. So if you don't want exception and overtime included, then you can use option 2 to export just regular items. If you don't want regular items included, you just want exception and overtime, then you're going to select option 3. And what we've done is in the documentation, we have been adding use cases on, selecting these different options to see why you would select what you selected, what the purpose is for. So I'm going to go back to the documentation and show that to you. It just kind of reinforces like how this is working. So I'm going to go down to our timesheets and export timesheets. And what we did is we, listed here the options. And then we have our use cases here. So this is where, again, this is where we've explained all of this on that slide. And then here are use cases. And We've just started typing these, so we have to look these over probably one more time to make sure. But it kind of shows you here, if I have an employee who does not get credit for attendance in USPS, and must obtain attendance credit via their timesheet, then these are the options I'm going to select. So my export option would be attendance without payments. My activity option would be export all items, because I want all items, regular, exception, overtime, so I can get attendance credit for them. And then at the same time too, I can also mark all timesheets as exported, so that every single item on my timesheet, if I don't select this, it's only going to include or update my timesheet with on the regular, exception, and overtime ones. It may not update any holiday or leave request type of activity. And so by check marking this at the same time, it will also update the status of those items as well. So they all show as exported on the timesheet. So if I don't select this, my timesheet's going to hang out there in the timesheet grid, because I may have, if I have any leave request or holiday items that obviously do not get included on the CSV file. So in order, if I see that, I'm like, why is this one hanging out here? Well, when I did the export, it included all my regular, exception, and overtime items, and it updated the status of those to exported. But I have these 2 items still on my timesheet that are sick leave requests. Okay, so all I need to do is go back in and select mark all timesheets exported. It will update those remaining items on the timesheet with the exported status, so that that timesheet no longer appears on my timesheet grid. So here's another use case. So for employees who obtain their payroll payments for exception and overtime items via their timesheet. So if they don't have to worry about attendance, but want their payments listed on the timesheet in order to get paid for them in USPS, then their export option is going to be payments without attendance. Their activity option is going to be export exception and overtime only. And then those are the items that are going to appear on the CSV file. Now you are going to have several other items on there for your regular time, and those will not be included on the CSV file, but you want them updated to show as exported, so that the whole timesheet shows as exported. So again, that's why you would also select mark all timesheets as exported, so that includes the rest of them. And then here is another example here for employees who do not get credit for attendance in USPS and must obtain credit via their timesheet, and may also be non-contracted compensation employees and must obtain their payments, their payroll payments via their timesheet. So they need both attendance and to get paid. So this would be an example where they select the export type payments with attendance, the activity option, export everything. So like I said, that's a regular, exception, overtime. And then at the same time, they can select mark all timesheets as exported, so it catches those leave requests, holiday items that might be on the timesheet as well. So it'll create that spreadsheet with their with the regular, exception, overtime that they have. That'll, excuse me, that'll be on the spreadsheet. And also the attendance information will be pulled in there as well. So that, or it'll be marked. And then we have a section down here, and we're still cleaning this part up a little bit. This is something I want to, check with the payroll team next week, and confirm the importing options in payroll regarding these CSV files. So now that you're kind of digesting those different options, I think it's a better alternative to what we had out there, because it pretty much, you can export about anything with payments or attendance, with any of the type of activities. It's has more options that we didn't have available with the prior version of this. It's just a matter, I think, of just playing around with it and seeing what you get as a result. And that's where I'm at as well. I'm just really starting to play around with them to say, okay, when I do select payments with attendance with export, what else showing up on my CSV file? If I use this one with export, what shows up? And I just need to go in here a little bit more and just kind of confirm all that for myself and understand it a little bit better.
Hey, Michelle,
Yes.
when we're exporting and, say we're playing around with it, I thought I read it, but is it going to mark whatever was exported first as exported? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
like on one hand, that's good, but on the other hand, what if they need to re-export something? Sometimes that happens. They, like some for any reason, the file, they lost the file, it's bad, whatever. Is there a way to re-export or a way to, I don't know, maybe not mark them as exported until you go in and say, I want to mark these as fully exported now? Or do you know what I mean? Like, just because sometimes, they do re-export multiple times or something for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the way that this is set up is that we have, it's going to mark them, if they're on the spreadsheet file, they're going to be updated as exported on the actual, timesheet line item. The questions that you have are further enhancements that we have out there to say, okay, we don't have that area in timesheets like we do in leave requests, where we have that like leave request history menu option. We need that timesheets. We don't have that, where you can go in and revert these back to an approved status, so that you can basically recreate the timesheet export if you need to. That's stuff that we have. If I'm understanding your question correctly, Amanda, that's stuff that we have out here as future enhancements in
Okay.
order to get that stuff out there. Yeah, I think that I think I got that somewhere here. Yeah, we need a timesheet history menu that mimics the leave history menu, so that when you do the export, and it would be all items would have, I'm just thinking out loud, all items would have to be exported on that timesheet in order for it to show up in this history menu. But then, just like with leave requests, you have the option to revert that back, and you'll have something similar to that in timesheets.
Okay. Thank you.
And if this is something where where everyone's like, we need this soon, create tickets, and we'll increase the times requested. I know it's a core project issue and not a feedback, so that's a very good sign. And but it does help them to see, okay, we've had 5 people ask about this now, or request this 5 different times for 5 of their districts. Then it kind of helps them to prioritize the work, their JIRA issues. So I feel like this is a big part that we still need to have on there for people to use it. And we'll talk about these other ones here in a little bit. Any other questions before I go in and we try one of these exports? All right, so I'm going to go in. And I am going to, I'm just going to log in as in here. And I'm under timesheets and timesheet export, where that's at. And this is the one that that Brenda just approved was Susan. So this is the only one I have in here at this point. But again, I could select, the timesheet period here. And then, if I wanted to select, like I said, just for a specific employee, I could just select Susan and she would appear. This is the filtered grid. So anything that appears in here is what is going to be exported. And you'll notice it says here that she has 12 line items on her spreadsheet. And I could take a look at her spreadsheet before that. That's probably a good idea. Let me just go in and take a look at her. I'm sorry, her timesheet. And just to view it again, it's been a while since we've been in there. So she has a bunch of regular items. She's got 1 sick leave and 1 exception. So no holidays. So that sick leave should not be included on the extract. Holidays and leave requests are not included on the CSV file because those are done. Those are already accounted for in their job calendar, or they've been posted via a leave request export. So the rest here, we're going to try this with just her exception, that everything else is already accounted for her. We just want to go in and account for attendance and payment for these 5 hours. And so go back to my timesheet export. And I'm going to export, and it only has her, so I'm not worried about filtering. Here are my options. So if I, again, want to make sure that all those regular items get updated with export as well, I will mark all timesheet as exported. If I don't, and I go in and say, I want payments with attendance, and I want just exception and overtime, then it's only going to include that 1 exception line item she has for the 5 hours. Everything else on that timesheet is going to stay as approved and not exported. So let's try that first. Let's not mark this. And let's just say I want payments with attendance, and I want just that 1 item. I'm going to go ahead and click on my export. I'm not sure why I got that error, but we'll just try this out anyways. A little bit bigger. But it is for the 12th. It's for that Saturday. And let me expand this even more so see all this. Oh, I know why I got that error message now. So in here, it has all the necessary information needed for it to get imported into USPS. Here's my column U for my attendance, and my column Y. The reason I got the error is because these test files are not the greatest test files, and I don't have a valid compensation record for this person for this year. Otherwise, it would have her compensation label on here. So let's pretend that it does. And but yes, it's only showing just her exception, which is what I wanted it to do. And I want it to account for her attendance. And if she had a valid compensation, it would show that as well. And at this point, then, if I go back and actually look at her timesheet now from that time period, so I'm going to go back up to a district timesheet. You'll notice that it still says approved. And that's because I only, I wonder if this didn't get marked because of that compensation failure. This should be marked, and that's my bad with my test data. But because this should have been marked yes, or check marked, because that was on the export file. And then the rest of these didn't get updated yet because I didn't mark them. I didn't have them on my CSV file. And I also didn't select it to mark the rest of the items as exported. So this is going to stay out here until I clean that up. So I can go back into export timesheets and mark all items as exported. And at this point too, it'll probably recreate that CSV file, but I'm not going to use it. I'm going to go ahead and just click on export. Yeah, that errors because of that. And now if I go back, the spreadsheet files should still be, should still just have that. Yeah, okay. And so because I selected all, it's going to include all of those. But again, I'm not going to do anything with this one. And it's not working anyways because it's compensation. But when I go back and look at her timesheet then, it's got to be with my compensation issue that's not updating because those were working. Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's my bad data. But it should have marked all of those to show that they've been exported. And when it does, then this will show as exported as well. Sorry about that. It's just my data that's causing that problem. I hope you at least get the gist of it. Like, okay, this is what it's supposed to be doing. I'm going to go into, we have another test instance. I'm going to try some in there. That's again, our test data too, so it may not work very well. But I'm going to give one a whirl and see what happens. And it takes a little bit. I'm going to go into timesheets and timesheet export. And we have quite a few sitting out here. I'm just going to pick on one of these here. I'm going to pick on the most recent one, 412 to 426. So I'm going to take a look at this timesheet first. And this is the one. And this is all just standard regular. So if these are ones where I don't, I have got the timesheet, but I don't need to actually post these into USPS. I'm just accounting for, what her timesheet was for the period. Again, she has been fully approved. And it showed that as well over here. So if I go back down to export timesheets and select that one period, and it just includes Susan's here, and I'm going to try export timesheet again. Now I might run into the same issue because it's our test data here. So for this one, there really is no need for me to really export anything because I don't have any exceptions or overtime. It was all regular time. So, I can just select these. I'm not going to do anything with the spreadsheet, but I want to make sure that they're all marked as exported. So it says here, if checked, all included timesheets will be marked as exported. Leave unchecked to only mark the exported line items, meaning if I just did like regular exception, those would be the only ones that would show up as exported. This case, I want everything. So I'm going to click on export again. Yeah, same issue. Sorry about that. I go and look at that timesheet, it probably didn't change anything. Yeah. It should have updated everything. So that's my bad with my data. But I hope you guys, yeah, once again, see what that will do. All right. So just to kind of, review this again, it's, it's got a lot of different variety here, right? You're basically looking at, what export type do I want based on what am I trying to import into payroll, and what activity do I want to include? Everything, or just regular, or just exception. And I know that all depends on, the employee and what they need to be paid on. And then this one is hey, it's going to mark them all as exported. And it's just basically updating the status to exported. So with that being said, I do want to talk about some of these enhancements, because we have some that are coming up on the next release. And then we have others where, if you feel that this really needs to be worked on sooner rather than later, put it in the chat here and we can track these. But here are the ones that are going to be on the next release. The timesheet export, I believe that what we just covered, I believe that they're going to move that underneath the timesheet manager menu. Sometimes when I'm reading some of these JIRA issues, it's a little cryptic for me. And sometimes, it basically explains it, but that one sounds pretty self-explanatory, that they're going to move that under the timesheet manager as part of the timesheet manager options. This one right here, 1283, improving partial day improvements. So I'm going to look at that one real quick. I'm going to go to 1283 here. So leave requests for partial days do not always adjust correctly. So they're talking about the actual leave request. So here's an example. So if a leave request, I wonder if this is the one you're talking about, Vicki. A leave request was taken 2 hours in the middle of the day. The timesheet line items do not adjust as user expects. So, and here's an example, 8 to 10, 10 to 12, and then 12 to 4. So it looks like that is something that they are going to get updated on the next release. It looks like it's been tested successfully, so that one's good to go. Timesheet items grid improvements. Yeah, and that's just on the actual timesheet when, like Susan is looking at her timesheet and just making any changes to it. That's, I think, where the one where, it wasn't focusing when I was adding a new item. So those are some of those timesheet grid improvements that are going to be done. The timesheet item entry. I think, Amanda, this was one that you had requested, adding a copy feature to copy one row to the next.
Yes.
So that's going to be taken care of. So on the next release, so that's great. And then some of the other ones, unless I did this PowerPoint slide last week, so they could have added a release date onto some of these already. So these might be a little outdated, but we do have one about auto calculating the hours. And I believe that was the one we talked about earlier, 1288, that we do have an issue based on the start and end date entries, that it will auto calculate those. Being able to handle a split shift. I think that's another one. I remember it was mentioned at OECN United. So it's another one they have out there. Improving the appointment type in unit filters for matched employees. So this is another one. And this might be kind of related to that ticket that you may have had, Amanda, on 1298, that maybe they will improve some of that for the matched employees. Ability to tie timesheets in with job calendars, and like we said, we don't know if that's a possibility. And then, Heidi, said maybe it may present some problems too if we do that. That's why right now that's just a feedback issue, and it's something that the developers are really going to have to look into to see if that's even a good idea at this point. And then my next slide is the rest of them here. Get to it. Timesheet export, including additional filters for pay groups and building codes. I knew we had that somewhere. So right now, when we're doing the export, all we could do it on was the employee. So I want to enhance that and provide those options as well. And then some of those other leave request export options that aren't in timesheets yet, like the ability to select specific timesheets via checkbox, like you can with leave requests before exporting. So that's another one that we have listed on here. And also a pre-export report option. We don't have that available in timesheets like we do with leave requests. More grid improvements. I think this is the one where I can't see all the items on the pay period at once on the timesheet. So being able to see more than one. Oh, and then 1303 is the one where we're making the focus when you add a new item for it to scroll down automatically. So that might not be part of these grid improvements here. Those are their own separate issues. And then the other one, which I really think is a very important one, is the export time history menu. Mimic what we have with leave requests. Do the same thing with timesheets so that you can revert one if you need to, or if you need to recreate the CSV file, you can do that. So yeah, this 1304 is the other one. So let's, as you can see, we still have some work to do on this. I appreciate the the districts and the ITCs that are using it to its, the capabilities that it has now. But the good news is, we are aware of some of the things that still need to be worked on. And as more people use it, just like with leave requests, we'll get more feedback. We'll get, Jira issues out there to improve it even more so. Okay, I think that's all I had today regarding timesheets. I've got a bunch of notes here. We've got the notes from the chat. And if there are things in there that, we haven't been able to answer, we'll follow up and make sure that we post that out there. We'll probably add it to the end of this slideshow and add anything else that, we need to address from today's session. Do you guys have any further questions or feedback?
Hey, Michelle, I have a quick question. Well,
Yeah.
might not be quick, I don't know. But so how would you recommend handling like substitute teachers? They get paid on a daily rate, and maybe this has been fixed. I haven't played with it, but I've noticed that it wasn't importing and calculating correctly when you tried to do like post it as a payment. Because if they put 4 hours in, it would go, and they were marked as daily and everything on their job and all that. It would
Okay.
go to payments, and it would take that 4 and multiply it by the daily rate. So I was seeing subs getting paid, astronomical fees for, instead of being able to handle like a partial day or a whole day. So right now I tell them I create a shift for them and do like a whole day, and then I say only use a 1 or like a 0.5, like keep everything 1 or under. But I was just wondering, if they start the automatic calculations for the times that they can enter, would that maybe be handled a little better in USPS, or has that been brought up before, or is that
I feel like this one's been brought up before, Amanda. I'm gonna look into that one, but I feel like that was something that was brought up and you discussed it with the payroll team already, but let me double check on that one.
Okay, so would the best practice right now just be try to keep, like, you could enter whatever starting times, but on the shift, say hours worked as 1, and then, because I mean that seemed to work. I was able to, they export and they get the full attendance, but then they also get, if they did like half a shift, it calculated at the correct daily rate.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I don't know a better way to do that than to keep it under 1,
Okay.
in order to track that. Yeah. But we will look into this and see, has it been fixed? And if not, is this the best way to do it, or we need to do something else?
Okay. And then on to sort of branch off of that, would it be possible to on timesheets and like how they enter their time, like in the configuration, to split out to say if you're certificated, you're daily, and we only want you to do either half or full increments of time to enter. But if you're hourly, we can give you up to a quarter, be under the timesheet functionality, I guess. That is that a
I
feedback
could ask
issue?
about that one. It might be, but we can look into that one too.
Okay.
I feel like that one's been discussed too, but I could be mixing that up with something else. So
Okay. I will write that down and put in a ticket then.
that would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Like I said, I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. I really do. Anyone else have any other questions about it? Timesheets or the last 3 days, or feedback on the overview session as a whole? All right. Well, I thank everyone again. I know that was a lot of information today, and some of it, we need to follow up on, but just, this overview session was just to provide like just just a feel for the timesheets and how they work at this point. Knowing that we have some updates to be made, but I appreciate you guys all sitting on the call and just absorbing timesheets for today. And obviously, as you guys are implementing it with your districts, please reach out. If there's something that, we could improve upon in the documentation, please let us know and we'll add that stuff just like we did with leave requests. I have a feeling we're going to be doing the same thing with the timesheets once we get more feedback from everybody. So I appreciate you guys taking the time, and you guys have a great weekend and happy Easter to everyone as well. Take care.